Around Canada, the United States, and Europe, events are unfolding that just a year ago would have seemed unthinkable. As we well remember, after the start of the trade war led by Donald Trump, Canada was one of the first countries to publicly face his dissatisfaction. Trump not only criticized Canadians, declaring that Canada should become a new state of the United States, but also insulted and humiliated the country, seriously worsening relations between allies. In response, Ottawa began to introduce countermeasures, gradually and deliberately strengthening cooperation with Washington's main geopolitical rival, China. What is important, however, is that recently Canada, together with Europe, which has suffered no less from American tariffs, has taken steps that until recently seemed like fantasy. The country, one of the most economically powerful and Western-governed in the world, has been expanding trade in euros several times over, gradually moving away from the dollar as the leading reserve and settlement currency, pushing dollar transactions into the background. For the United States, this is not just an alarming signal, it is a direct blow to its hegemony. The dollar has long been a key instrument of American power, and now that power is visibly fading. Europe sees this as an opportunity to strengthen its currency, enhance financial independence, and weaken the dollar-centric structure of the global system. Trump, on the other hand, may not realize all the risks of his policy. In his pursuit of short-term gain, by demanding concessions from allies and pressuring them, he is losing the most important thing, American influence. Meanwhile, China is benefiting from this situation. The weakening of the dollar strengthens the Chinese economy, and Beijing will do everything it can to encourage such a development. According to respected publications, including analysts from American and European think tanks, Canada has already announced an accelerated turn toward Europe, abandoning its former role as Washington's junior partner. One article even stated that America is no longer a friend but a risk. That is how the Canadian discourse now sounds. In Canada's official 2025 budget, it is noted that the new American policy has become a factor of substantial tension for Canadian exporters. Supply chains are suffering, tariffs are rising, and the government emphasizes that conditions are changing dramatically. The key point is the decline in trade with the United States and the parallel growth of exports beyond it. According to statistics, Canadian exports to the US in March fell by 6.6% compared to the previous period, while exports outside the US increased by almost 24.8%. These are not just numbers, they are a signal. Canada is deliberately reorienting itself. The European Union is also joining in. The European Central Bank, represented by Christine Lagarde, announced that the euro could become an alternative to the dollar if Europe strengthens its financial and defense architecture. All this forms the basis for the devaluation of dollar influence and the redistribution of global power. From Washington's point of view, this is a warning. When allies begin to abandon the currency that served as an instrument of power and control, when they become less dependent on American markets and standards, the system itself begins to shake. And the timing is not accidental. By resorting to tariffs and targeted pressure on allies, Trump is creating a negative reverse effect. Allies are finding ways to bypass or replace the United States. One of these paths is the emancipation of Canada and Europe. Among insiders at foreign analytical centers, the term "turn away from the dollar" has emerged as a marker of a new era. One report noted that investors will be shocked by how much will shift away from the United States in standards, networks, and infrastructure. Looking a bit further ahead, Canadian politicians and business elites are now speaking precisely about diversification. For example, Canada's foreign minister has stated that the country must deepen its economic and defense ties with Europe and Asia, since the United States no longer appears to be a reliable partner. In response to all this, the American side sees not just a disruption in trade, but a potential collapse of the dollar as a universal reserve currency. If transactions and contracts begin to move away from the dollar, the United States loses a major part of its economic leverage. Many experts call this a systemic risk. What matters greatly is that this is not simply Canada's decision. It is a signal to the entire Western world. China, for its part, is both observing and acting. The weakening of the dollar means the strengthening of the Chinese currency, the expansion of opportunities for international transactions outside the dollar, and the consolidation of Beijing's position as a global player. In this context, Canada and Europe are becoming the driving force of a new architecture. Instead of being mere partners of the United States, they are turning into autonomous actors. Discussions that Canada could one day join the European Union, while exaggerated, reflect the depth of this rethinking. For Europe, this opens a window of opportunity, strengthening the euro, reducing dependence on American debt, developing financial markets, and boosting defense capability and autonomy. If the euro becomes a global alternative, it will not just be symbolic. It will represent a tangible redistribution of financial and political power. Christine Lagarde stated directly that the euro will not gain influence automatically. It must earn it. Yet things are not so simple. The dollar remains powerful. Its role as a reserve currency does not disappear overnight. In the short term, the United States still enjoys advantages, but time favors those prepared for change. Paradoxically, while Trump seeks compromises with allies, it is precisely on this path that he is undermining the very foundation of American economic strength. Allies, realizing that the United States is not only burdening them with tariffs, but also withdrawing from its own commitments, are beginning to seek guarantees outside the American orbit. The faster they do so, the less time the US has to restore its influence. Thus, what we are witnessing is not merely a trade war. We are witnessing the beginning of a new stage, one where economics, finance, and politics intertwine, where the dollar loses both political and economic power, where former generations of allies are redefining their place, and where China, as a geopolitical player, draws advantage from the dollar's weakening. And Canada, according to leading media analysis and intelligence assessments, plays a key role in this process as one of the main disablers of the old system. The restructuring of economic priorities, the gradual move away from the dollar, and the growth of trade with Europe and Asia, all are elements of a vast chessboard on which America has yet to decide which corner it will play from tomorrow. In summary, Canada and Europe, two major forces in the Euro-Atlantic economy, clearly do not wish to remain on the sidelines. They are choosing between being led by the United States or becoming full-fledged players with their own autonomy. And in their choice of the latter lies, perhaps, one of the most significant transformations of the world system in recent decades. And while the White House tries to ignore these warning signals, the rest of the world is already restructuring the financial architecture without America's participation, preparing for a new global economic era.